This week's Frugal Friday video is going to be a pattern from blue Calla. This is called the Morning Glory. I'm going to add a D-ring to it in case I want to use it as a wristlet. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It can be used as a pouch. This pattern is a skill builder in the fact that we will be doing a reverse applique and we will be sewing up some darts. Definitely beginner friendly, definitely domestic machine friendly. The only hardware we need is the D-ring if you choose to add it and a magnetic snap. But we do have a flap which is going to have the magnetic snap and the reverse applique on it, so that will take the place of the zipper as for the closure. We are going to cut out 2 exterior main panels and 2 lining main panels, 2 slip pocket pieces for the interior, 2 flap pieces, and 2 of these circles that we will be using for our applique. If you have a print that you want to use for the center kind of as the window portion, you could fussy cut something. I'm choosing to use a cloud print just because I thought it would be cute and the colors would look good together. All of my fabrics are from Jen's Fabrics. They're all a cotton canvas and I have a layer of Royal Pixie Light on everything. On one of the flap pieces and 2 of the main exterior pieces, I have Royal Pixie Heavy kept out of the seam allowance. That is all the interfacing, that's all the hardware, that's all the pieces we're going to be using. We're going to start sewing up this pattern by sewing up the easiest part, which will be our slip pockets. You'll cut out 2 pieces for the slip pocket and you're going to put them right sides together. What we are going to do is we're going to sew all around this piece. We're just going to leave an opening here at the top for us to turn it right sides out. So I'll back stitch whenever I start, then go all the way around, then back stitch when I stop. I'm going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Whenever you put these 2 pieces right sides together, make sure that everything is lined up all along the edges. If you like to use clips, you can definitely use them. I have the 2 pieces sewn together, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pinking shears to start cutting here, go all the way around, and then stop cutting here. I will not cut anywhere this open area is. Now that I've cut all around with the pinking shears, I'm going to use this opening to turn this right sides out. I take a chopstick and I just use it to run all along the bottom and along the curves to kind of help push everything out so everything looks nice and smooth. And then what I'll do is I will just come to the top here, put my fingers inside and pull, and that should allow those top edges to fold in nicely. If I need to adjust them a little, I will, just so it looks seamless. Once I have it looking the way I want, I'll go ahead and add some clips to the top, and then I'm going to top stitch across just the top edge. That will both close up this opening but also give it a finished look. I'll do that top stitching just 1/8 of an inch away. Once you have the top stitching done along the top, go ahead and pull out one of your lining pieces. This will end up being the back lining piece for me. I like to have a slip pocket on the back so that whenever I open my bag, I can easily put things in and out of it. Before I add this slip pocket, I want to talk a little bit about something else I'll need to do to this piece. On all 4 of your main panels, the 2 exterior and the 2 lining, you're going to make a series of dots on the corner or on the curve. So here is 3 dots here. I got these marks directly from the pattern piece. I put them on this side and I transferred them on this side as well. Go ahead and make sure you have those marks before you attach your slip pocket. And as I mentioned, this piece only has the Royal Pixie Light on it, as well as the Royal Pixie Light on my slip pocket pieces. I'm going to center my slip pocket piece onto the lining back panel, and I'm going to use the pattern measurements to make sure I have the proper placement. Once I have it placed the way I like, I'm going to make sure that the top is top stitched and it is towards the top, and then I'm just going to sew down the sides across the bottom, back up the other side to attach it to this piece. The pattern tells us that we can top stitch over top of this previous row of top stitching about 1.5 inches on each side, just to prevent some of the gaping that sometimes happens when you have large slip pockets. If you didn't want to do that, you could also divide it down the middle and sew there to make this 2 small slip pockets instead of 1 large one. I like the idea of sewing in that little bit on each side, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to start here at the top, back stitch, and then go all the way around, come up to the other top and back stitch there as well. I have this slip pocket attached, and you can see I do have that little bit of extra tacking down on the sides. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over to the wrong side, and I'm going to see these marks that I made here. What we're going to do is we are going to pinch at this first one. When we turn over from the other side, we can see they are matching up and they are flush. They're not crooked like this. They are meeting and it looks like it's in line. I'm going to put a clip right here to hold it in place. And then I'm going to do that same thing for the mark on the other side. We're leaving the mark in the middle untouched for right now. Once again, I'm just making the point there on the mark I made, and the edges are all lining up. I'll place another clip there. So you can see I have the two clips on each side, and the mark in the middle has nothing on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these marks where I have them pinched and fold them to that center mark. I've just pulled it over so that it can match. I'm going to make sure the edges stay flat, and I'm going to add a clip here to hold it in place. And then I'll do the same thing with this other side. Pull it over to that middle as well. Once I have them both clipped to the center, you can see it's making a little dart or a little pleat there. On the back, whenever I sew it, I'll make sure they're touching and butted up against each other. I'm just going to baste these two pieces together. So I'll start basting from the wrong side so that I can see everything I'm doing and making sure they're meeting in the middle. So I'll back stitch. I find this step easier to hold this upright so that my dart is kind of forming a little bit of a bowl there, so that whenever I take the clips off, it doesn't immediately separate or open up. Whenever it's time to take the clip off, I'm going to hold my hand on that dart so it stays in place at least until I tack down that first little bit of the folded fabric. I'll keep my hand holding down the second one whenever I move that clip, and then continue to sew across that edge. This is how that dart looks. Let me poke it out so you can see it a little bit better. You can see where they're meeting there, and I have both of the edges to that middle. When you flip it over from the right sides and you're looking at it, you can see it just makes a pleat here. You're going to do this on the other side of this lining piece as well as the other lining piece. The pattern does not call for you to put a slip pocket on the other lining piece, so I'm not going to, but you easily could. So for the lining, go ahead and sew all of those darts or pleats together. You will have a total of 4 for your lining. For your exterior main panel, you're going to do the exact same thing. I went ahead and added a magnetic snap. This is going to be my front, and where the flap will come down and attach to that magnetic snap. The back won't have anything on it. We'll attach the flap, but we'll go ahead and sew all the darts before we add the flap. You may have fleece or Royal Pixie Heavy or some other type of stabilizer on the back of yours kept out of the seam allowance. So it may make it a little bit trickier here to do this, but it still is the same concept. You're pinching and folding, pinching and folding. I'm going to do the rest of these off camera just so you're not sitting and watching me do the same thing the entire time. Before I go and do those off camera, we're going to start working on the flap. For this flap accent piece, it tells you to cut an accent and an exterior piece. I didn't follow the directions so much, and I cut both of mine out of my accent piece, and I probably shouldn't have. If I would have cut one of these pieces out of this material, whenever I fold it back, it might blend in a little bit better. If I make any mistakes on mine, it's going to be pretty obvious. So I do suggest that for one of the pieces, the piece that we're going to sew right sides together right now, it's going to look the same as your flap piece. For my exterior flap piece, I don't have any magnetic snaps. For the lining flap piece, I did cut it so that it is upside down, and I did add the magnetic snap that I got from my pattern piece. Also from this pattern piece, you see there's a dot here that says accent circle center. I used my stiletto and made a hole there, and I transferred that hole to my exterior flap piece. On my accent circle that I cut out, there's also a center hole. So I made the dot on the piece of the accent material that I'm going to be attaching to my flap. You can see I made that dot there. This is going to allow me to center this up perfectly on my flap. You can see that I also drew around my sewing line. I got my sewing line from this circle that is included in the pattern. It's called a flap circle stitch guide. You simply use that same dot on this one to match it up and then trace around your stitch line. We are going to sew directly on this line. The way I attach this, or the way the pattern tells me to attach this, it tells me to take a stick pin and poke through the center of that accent piece, poke the end of the stick pin through the center of that dot you made on your flap, and that gives you that perfect alignment. Now I don't need to keep the stick pin in there to sew because my material is going to be okay to just stay in place. I'm not going to be doing a lot of shifting around, but that is how you match up to make for sure you have everything centered. It's a really cool way to do it, super easy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this over my machine. I'm doing it easily because I don't have it attached, and I'm going to start sewing around this circle to attach it to my flap. All of my materials, like I said, are cotton canvas. It's the same thing for my accent and my flap, and they all have that layer of Royal Pixie Light. I'm going to back stitch when I start sewing. And I'm going to go around this circle slowly because it is important that I keep on that stitch line. So I'll pivot probably every other stitch just to make for sure that I'm staying on track. After you have the circle sewn on, I'm just going to fold this in half, and I'm going to cut through all the layers here in the middle just to get it started. I'm going to cut this extra through both layers, so the flap and this circle. I'm going to cut it maybe about 3/8 an inch on the inside of that stitch line. So I'll put my scissors here in the middle, and you can draw on this cut line if you want, but I'll just start curving around, keeping about 3/8 of an inch. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't want it too far away. I don't want it too close up, so that just is going to be close as I can to being perfect. After you have that opening removed, we're going to go ahead and start making snips all along here. I don't want them so close that it creates like a fringe, and I don't want them too close to my stitches, but I want them close enough so that I can flip this to the wrong side. So right now we're looking at the right side of the flap. I'm going to cut all around here to make these snips so I can fold this back. If when you're folding you're seeing too much of this fabric, hopefully yours matches and it won't be obvious like mine will be, you can always snip a little closer. Just make for sure you do not snip into your stitches. So now that I have that done, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start pushing this back to that wrong side. So I will push a little, make sure I smooth out that edge, and then I'm going to clip it. I'll take this over to the iron when I'm off camera, but for right now, just to show you what it's going to look like, I'm just going to clip. So just folding and clipping. My goal is to not to see any of this piece from the exterior side, but I'm not going to feel too bad if it's not perfect. This is how it looks with the clips in place. I need to be able to have this laying flat without the clips. So I'm going to go to the iron and iron everything flat. I probably will have to use my glue stick to glue down some of this so that it'll stay flat and won't be flipping up even when the clips are gone. If I'm having areas where the puckering is being really noticeable, all I need to do is clip closer to my stitch line. That just means I didn't get clipped close enough. I'm going to try to leave it as it is and just try to iron it flat, but if at any point I feel like I need to clip further, I will. I'll come back after I had this ironed and after I had the darts sewn on my exterior lining pieces, and we'll look and see what we have and then go on to our next steps. I sewed the darts on all of the curves on the exterior and lining panels. The next thing I'll need to do for the exterior is I will need to baste on this D-ring connector. If you are using one, baste it on according to the pattern measurements as for placement. After I do that, then I'm going to put these right sides together and sew them together. Before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about my flap. Whenever I was ironing everything out, it was looking good. I was good with it. But then whenever I compared it to the flap lining piece, it was really distorted. My exterior was really distorted. Whenever I cut it out and I was pulling it back, it just kind of distorted the fabric. So I was ironing it flat and it still wasn't going back to that proper shape. So I clipped it to the lining piece, the piece that has the magnetic snap. And I was just letting it kind of sit here and kind of stretch that fabric back out to relax the fibers a little so it'll go back to its original shape. It's still not perfect, but it's good enough. And I will be able to sew it right sides together with the lining and hopefully have the shape of the flap properly and things like that. But I wanted to mention to you, if yours is looking a little bit off too, clip it and pull it to the lining piece, and then use your iron to press it again to kind of help the fabric lay the way you want it to. You should have your one piece left that's going to go in the frame of this window here. So you're just going to place it in the orientation you want. So I'm going to unclip everything and I'll show you what I mean. And then we're just going to top stitch around the circle to attach this piece to this flap. Then we'll sew the flaps right sides together. It's not a hard concept, but it did bother me that I had the distortion on this exterior flap. Just afraid it will look a little off at the end. If you wanted to use double-sided tape or stick pins or anything like that, you could, but you're basically going to have it matching the way you want it to, just the part that you want to see through here. So this part isn't so much like has to be perfect in any way. You want it to be showing what you want, and then you want to be able to stitch all around here and catch everything of this accent piece so it can stay intact. So since I like it this way, I'm going to slowly drag it over to my sewing machine. I'm not using any double-sided tape or glue. You could if you wanted to, but I'm just going to go around here, stitch 1/8 of an inch to secure these two pieces. Once you have that accent sewn into place, you're going to trim off the extra from your accent piece. Once I have everything trimmed up around the back, I'm going to place these two pieces right sides together. I'm going to try my best to take the time to really stretch out this exterior so that it matches up perfectly, so that way I can get the best chance of having a really nice finish on this flap. I have it clipped right sides together. I'm going to sew it looking at this side. Since this is the piece that is a little bit smaller, I want to make for sure I don't miss anything when I'm sewing around here. I'm going to leave the top completely open, not sewing any on the top, so I'm just sewing around the sides and the bottom with the seam allowance given the pattern to attach these two pieces. I'm going to use my pinking shears once again to trim all around these curves, and then I'll turn it right sides out through the opening there at the top. I have all the curves smoothed out, I have everything clipped, and now I'm going to start top stitching here at the top, go down around the sides, across the bottom, up the top, and then I'll baste this top closed. Since I'm having some puckering and some issues with size, I'm going to make for sure I'm holding everything down flat, and so I'm going to get the best sew possible. Here's how that flap looks. I do have a little bit where this front part, the exterior part, has shrunken, that is smaller than the lining, but it's only about 1/4 of an inch, and since my seam allowance is bigger than that, it won't be a problem. So I did get it taken care of. The back is just fine. There's no problems with the back. It's just this front part. You can see that it's pulling and wrinkling maybe just a little bit here on the sides, but nothing that affects it really at the end. So here's how the flap looks. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to pull out this piece with the D-ring connector, and I'm just going to baste it into place. I'm basting mine onto my front piece just so I don't have to worry about it on the back, since I'll be adding the flap to the back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my front and back main panels. I'll do the same step for the lining, and I'm just going to put them right sides together. You can see I'm turning one concave and having one convex so they fit perfectly, and I can have everything lining up. I'll start clipping at the top and then start clipping the rest of the way around. My darts or pleats should match up perfectly. You can see them matching up, so I'm just laying them on top of themselves. If we had the interfacing in the seams there, it would be quite bulky, so definitely if you add anything extra like a deck of LI, a Royal Pixie Heavy, or a fleece, keep it out of the seam allowance. There isn't a separate pattern piece for the interfacing, so you will just have to draw that out and figure it out so that it's kept out of the seam allowance. Once you have everything clipped in place, you can see it's right sides together. I'm just going to sew around here with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now that we have those pieces sewn together, we're going to add the flap. Part with the magnetic snap is going to be your front. So open this up and make sure you're going to the back without the magnetic snap. Just going to open everything up there. And I'm going to attach the flap right sides together with the back. I want to be looking at that magnetic snap. So I'll slip it in, match up the top, and you'll kind of center it, but really it's going to fit almost edge to edge with that seam allowance. Clip it along, make sure you're clipping it right sides together with the back of your bag. You could do this step beforehand, but I'm just following the pattern directions which say to do it after the bag is sewn together. If your flap does not fit within that seam allowance, you would definitely want to recheck. The flap should not be in your seam allowance, and that's one reason probably why the designer has you to wait to put your flap on here after you've already sewn the bag together to make for sure it doesn't get caught. So now what I'll do is I'll just flip this back and then I'll sew, or baste I should say, this flap into place. So my exterior is now done. Now what you need to do is you need to take your front and back lining pieces and sew them together the same way you did your exterior. I've sewn my lining together, and I forgot to mention you do have to leave an opening in the bottom of the lining because that's the way we're going to turn this pouch out. If you wanted, you could do a drop-in, but a drop-in would be a little bit tricky because this is a small opening and you have that flap, which is a lot of extra bulk. So I'm definitely going to do it the way the pattern suggests. I'm going to put this slip pocket against the back. So that means my slip pocket is going to be against my flap. My lining is right sides out, my exterior is wrong sides out. You could do this vice versa if you wanted to. I'm just going to match up my seams and start clipping there first. Once you have the seams matched, go ahead and finish clipping all around the top, matching the exterior and lining top pieces. Everything should fit pretty good. If there's a little bit of bulk, just work it in, but it shouldn't be too off because the pattern has the exterior and the lining were cut with the same pattern piece, and the seam allowance should allow these pieces to match up pretty decently. I have a little bit of extra bulk here, but that doesn't mean that it's not fitting. It just means I got to work it in a little bit better. If you push this part down, it'll lay a lot smoother and you'll be able to work in that extra bulk. So here's how it looks. I'm going to sew all the way around this edge, the top, with the seam allowance given the pattern. So this will be attaching the exterior to the lining. It doesn't matter so much where you start, but I'm going to start at the front because there's less bulk there, since that flap is in the back. Definitely back stitch when you start and stop, and then just slowly go all the way around. Use your fingers to feel to make sure you're not going to be sewing over any puckers or bumps or anything like that. Once you have it sewn together, go ahead and trim up the seam allowance by about half. After you have the seam allowance trimmed, it's time to turn the bag right sides out. So start by opening up that opening in the lining, and I usually start by pushing one corner through. We do have the flap, so it might be easier to push the flap through first on this one. Once you have it turned right sides out, it's probably smartest for you to top stitch before you close up the lining. But I'm just going to go ahead and close up the lining and take my chances on top stitching. So I want to put my fingers in on both sides of that opening so that the raw edges fold in, and then I'm just going to clip across, and I'll just sew with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to close that opening. I already know that I'm going to be top stitching this from the lining side. So before I have the exterior going the way it needs to go, I'm going to tuck it into the lining so I can get a top stitch that way. I'm going to take the time to roll the seams. I really want to see the exterior poking ahead of the lining. So I want to be able to look at the lining and not see any of the interior of this bag. So whenever I flip it the right way after I've top stitched, you will only see the exterior. You won't see any of the lining. So I'm just rolling those seams and clipping. For the back of the bag, we can't do any clipping because we have the flap here, and we're definitely going to top stitch with the flap, up. So I will just have some pressure here to make for sure everything lays nicely on the exterior side. I'm going to go ahead and start on the back, and I'm going to sew just about 1/8 of an inch away. So I'm really using my fingers to make sure everything's laying flat and I have some tension on this, and I'll start top stitching here. I'm going to go all the way around this pouch, trying to make for sure that I don't sew over any puckers, and when I come to the front that I'm not seeing the lining poking through and showing from the exterior side. Once you finish top stitching, go ahead and flip the bag out. I'm sure I will need to clip this and do some ironing, but I want to show you how it's going to look freshly off the sewing machine. I'm going to change my camera angle so you can see it clearly. Here's how my blue Calla Morning Glory pouch looks. Now, I didn't pick the best fabrics to showcase something unique here. I kept mine kind of simple. So my version's not the cutest version. Your version could be a lot better. You could have a fussy cut print right here. You could put a cork tag here. You could do some embroidery, whatever you want. But you can see it opens up nicely. Very wide opening. You have the darts or the pleats that give it a really nice shape. You can see it stands up easily on its own. I have the D-ring on the side for if you want to wear it as a wristlet, or you could put a D-ring on both sides and wear it as a belt bag or even a crossbody and wear this against your chest. It's not a wide size, but adding these pleats here give it so much extra depth. I could easily add a full-size water bottle in here and carry it easily. The pocket doesn't do any like kind of gaping since I have it tacked down on each side, so it's a really nice clean finish. I feel like this pattern has a lot of potential. You could add a zipper pocket here on the back. So here is the Morning Glory pouch from Blue Calla. Beautiful, cute. I'm using fabrics from Jen's Fabrics, and I feel like this is a great beginner-friendly pattern for you to learn a few new techniques. You learn darts, you learn reverse applique, and you get to make this without a lot of hardware. Definitely recommend this pattern. I think it's super cute. Let me know if you've made this pattern, or if you make it, definitely tag me in it. I love seeing your makes whenever you make a pattern that you found on my channel. If you have any patterns you'd like to see me sew up, definitely let me know. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.